late August 1924, and Charles Carson Reed, they fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them. Beside him Lord Grantham stood, solemn and sombre, in his captain's uniform, in front of the new war memorial, placed in the centre of Downton village, listing all of the men who had fought and died for their country. From Downton Abbey, Milo had walked with Thomas. He had shown her to the front of the house. Two of the houseboys stifling a giggle when they saw Thomas had held a hand out to Milo. He had turned and scowled at them, and even Carson, who had said good morning to Milo, as they left, told them they had earned themselves no free Wednesday afternoon. "What happened to Mr. Branson?" asked Mr. Melsley, concerned. Milo turned her head to listen. He had to have given a cover story. He looked worse than she remembered. Even that morning. "Met three ne'er-do-wells late last night who did him over," Bates told them, twinkling a brief grin to Milo. She glanced away. She had never invited him to get to know her better, as saying went, nor did she wish him to be beaten. A swift glance in Thomas's direction made her heart sink a little as she saw the look of satisfaction on his own face, too. Clearly, the men had decided that was the course of action they were going to take over Branson's rape of her. They wanted their own justice, Milo concluded. "Don't think of him anymore," Milo told herself. He would be going, it had been arranged. And if he did not, she must be back outside Downton Abbey, and resume the Troscad. "There is a seat for you here, Miss Ashby," Lady Edith had told Milo. "All those representing the fallen may sit." When she saw it was beside Branson, Thomas felt her stiffen, and she looped her arm into his. "That is very good of you, Lady Edith," Milo told her. "I would rather stand." And she bent towards Marigold, stroking her cheek. The little girl looked up to her quickly, and gave a gentle chuckle. "She does so look like you." And she did not see the bolt of realization pass over Tom Branson's features, for he was dead to Milo. "Please, stand where you will," Edith faltered, glancing away, and Mr. Melsley smiled warmly to Milo. "By us," he told her. "I did not get to serve my king and country. I would be honored if you would stand by me, Miss Ashby." Thomas glanced down to her. "You do open your mouth and put your foot in it, Milo," he cautioned her, gently. Milo looked up, astonished. "Lady Edith? The child?" "I only said, what everyone else is thinking," Thomas told her. She gave him a wide-eyed stare. How was she to know? "Never mind, it will come out sooner or later," Thomas told her, and turned his head to his regiment, who were ranked beside the war memorial. And now it was over. Around the memorial, the officers of the local yeomanry, standing guard over the names of the men of Downton, saluted as the last post was played, while the congregation sat, or stood. Milo tried to picture Ernest. His features were there, his face. But most of his image would not come. Memory was fading. Soon, there would be only her memories of her beloved brother, snippets of a past life, and his name left here. And then, just a name, for future people to wonder at. Was he a good man? What did he do? Milo wanted to shout and tell everyone that he was a most excellent physicist and the kindest and most loving brother any sister could ever have. Instead, she bowed her head, her tears watering a very local patch of green by her feet. Thomas took her hand and squeezed it, gently. "Stand at ease," came the sergeant major's voice. "Stand easy." Before the crowd could move, however, Lord Grantham took a step towards them. "Before you disperse, I would beg your indulgence for a moment. Can I draw your attention to one more gallant chap who volunteered to fight? He is not from Downton and so his name does not appear on the memorial. But his name is cherished by some here, so it seems right to us to mark his passing. Mrs. Patmore." And Lord Grantham held out his hand, gesturing just beyond them, to the wall of the church, then led her the congregation to it, where a sandstone block had been mounted. Hearing the words, "Remember here the sacrifice of Private Archie Philpotts, Lancashire Fusiliers, died 4th of February, 1917, aged 19 years," around Mrs. Patmore, all hats were taken off. My sister would have been honored, Mrs. Patmore managed. I'm so pleased for you, Daisy said. Milo looked at her, and back to the plaque. It had been Daisy who had told her the circumstances. What a good man Lord Grantham was. Just as it should be, Mr. Mason added. Thomas led Milo away, and they stood by the lych gate of the church. It was what he would have wanted, under the circumstances, Thomas told Milo. Understated. Just so. And Milo could not agree more. Everyone in Downton knew him, had bought electrical devices from him. Even the Downton kitchen still had items that Ernest had sold to them. And now, she began, as they made to walk through the churchyard and the quick way back to Downton Abbey, but broke off and stopped walking when she saw Daisy coming towards them, smiling intermittently from Milo to Thomas. When will you come back? She asked, as they began to walk together. To Downton? Milo smiled. I am coming now, to the memorial dinner, she replied. Daisy's expression clouded, and she shook her head. No, what I meant was, I think what Daisy means, can you fix the myriad electrical items we have acquired over the years? Mrs. Patmore put in. She had caught up with them, as had most of the staff, and Milo reflected on the sunny lunchtime, and how peaceful everything seemed. Daisy glanced from Mrs. Patmore and back to Milo, as Thomas gave a snort. That and all, she added. Milo smiled. I don't think Miss Ashby wants to be bothered with all that, Carson told her, touching Mrs. Patmore on the shoulder for a moment. She has come for the memorial. Milo looked to Mr. Carson. I can, she told him, nodding to Thomas as he held the gate the other side of the churchyard for them to all pass through. I am not needed back in Cambridge until tomorrow morning. What is broken? And Daisy listed nearly every electrical item the kitchen possessed that needed a repair. Milo hoped there were things still about, in the generator room, or at her house in the village. It is good to see you again, Milo, Anna told her, giving her a weak smile. Bates beside THRM, having caught back of the group. I am sorry to have missed you earlier. What were you doing last night? Outside? Mr. Bates told me he'd seen you. Milo dashed a quick look from Anna to Mr. Bates, whose expression gave nothing away. Business, Milo told her. Irish business. And I heard Mr. Barrow say something about Germany, Mrs. Patmore asked. She is going to Germany, to study with several renowned physicists, Thomas told them, a gimlet of pride in his heart. I only wished to know that she would be safe. He hoped he had said the word safe loud enough for Branson to hear. Milo turned her head. Rutherford and Chadwick's believe it to be, Milo told him, her voice lower. Her words intended for Thomas alone. Other scientists are going from the Cavendish, including Oppenheimer. She hoped Goettingen would make him happier than the Cavendish had. Safe? Daisy asked. Thomas glanced down to her. Of course she had overheard. She had ears like that radio device that Milo had been working in with Cockcroft, detecting every sound in the vicinity. After unrest there, Thomas put in, and his mind was drawn to sympathy for Edith Crawley, as he thought of Michael Gregson, murdered because he spoke up for something that was right. The Mary Crawley had been enabled in her grief by her family. But her younger sister, having her lover go missing for over a year, and his death announced over luncheon, was afforded nothing like the same grief. Yet, who was to say whose love was the stronger, whose love was the most legitimate? And his heart grew sore as he thought of Ernest, and the love he had for that man. It was neither socially legitimate, nor legal as to what he felt. Yet, he felt it all the same. Whatever's happening over there, doesn't seem quite right, Molesley put in. He was walking beside Phyllis Baxter, and Thomas noted their proximity. It's not so good here people as wants jobs as can't RVM, Mrs. Patmore added, brushing her skirts to her legs as they crossed the meadow, walking through long tall flowering plants. The whole country will be on strike soon. Good, then good, said a voice, near the back of the group. Thomas turned and saw that Miss Bunting had joined the group. If a people do not stand up to other people, where will it end? In death, destruction, loss of faith and heartache, I would imagine, Milo replied. Mrs. Bunting gave her a grievous look. She caught up to Milo and stopped walking, getting in front of her. Milo stopped. Miss Bunting put out a hand. Milo did not take it. Says something socialism, don't you agree, Daisy? Miss Bunting added, looking across to the undercook of Downton. Daisy said nothing, but looked between her and Milo. And what do you want, Miss Bunting? Thomas growled, resentful that the woman who had taken half Branson's attention. A word, she told Thomas, and made to take Milo to one side. Thomas held her hand, petulantly. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of my husband, Milo told her. She flinched for a moment, shocked, before putting her hands onto her hips. Well, as it is, she told her, as the staff who had seen the beginnings of the confrontation stopped too, you have been teaching Daisy Mason. She looked across to Daisy. She writes to me, and I help her, Milo replied. Not that it is any of your business, Thomas put in, warningly. It is my business, Miss Bunting retorted. I have my way, and, you think there is only one right way to teach? It was Milo's turn to be blunt. I do. Then you've got it wrong, Milo informed her. She is behind in her mathematics. Any of the facts you have taught are patently untrue. Oh, really? Yes, really, Milo replied. Do you not read the papers? Apart from the politics section, I mean, do you not read of the discoveries that are being made every single day? She shook her head. You told Daisy that mountains have been made because the earth is shrinking. And so they are, Miss Bunting replied. And that the planet is about 100,000 years old. True. She snapped back. And yet, my esteemed colleague, Patrick Blackett, has devised a method whereby to track the movement of the Earth's crust, based on the theory of a German geologist. Mountains are caused because the Earth's crust are made of several sections. Some sections are less dense than others, and they move antagonistically, that is, opposite to one another. That is patently a lie. But Milo shook her head. Science doesn't lie, Miss Bunting. Science exists to hypothesize, and to have those hypotheses challenged. Please, go ahead. Challenge Blackett, and Wenner and Shackleton and the other paleogeologists, who are discovering the same thing. Rutherford has shown radioactive rocks to be 700,000 years old. But, I really must protest, science is strong, Miss Bunting, not weak, Milo pushed on. It overturns untruths and fallacies, because, no matter who is in charge of any society, be it nationalists, be it socialists, nature is still nature. Milo inhaled. And this time, her defense was sprung to by an unlikely ally. It's true, that is, Daisy told Miss Bunting. Mr. Mason, his farm don't know whether the king on the throne is good or bad, or whether we have a king at all. Farming relies on the sun and the wind, and the rain, and the seasons. And as for socialism, communism, in nature there has always been hierarchy, from the first time there has been a civilization. Milo stared at the woman, who stared back, mutely. She looked as if she were shaking. Around them more people were beginning to gather. Thomas took a step towards Milo, and reached for her hand. I would be wholly convinced, Miss Bunting, except for the warning in my heart, that socialism merely replaces hierarchy with the same, in different clothing, artificial hierarchy, with ... as much bloodshed as anything else. Now hold on. Sarah Bunting began, but Milo continued onwards, and she fell silent. Does the revolution in Russia not show us that? White Russians, red Russians in a civil war, having displaced their hierarchy, and she broke off and looked across to Violet Crawley. May you tell Lady Rose that her Russians are welcome to use my cottage for as long as they need. Beginning tomorrow. She looked back to Miss Bunting, as Lady Violet Crawley replied that she would pass the message on. That Milo was giving Miss Bunting a dressing down was worth not making everyone listen to her. And now, those original communists are being hounded from office, sent to Siberia, by new communists believing something slightly different. Is that true? Whispered someone. And after them, someone else, and someone else. She waited to see if the opinionated school teacher was about to continue. I am all for equality, Miss Bunting, but not at the expense of humanity. Live and let live. Accept the different. She reached to Thomas for his hand, and found it just beside his fingers. Move on a little at a time. Don't try to fix things that are not broken with tools of war. You can't make peace like that. This time, Sarah Bunting stepped towards Milo, her words forming in her mouth, outraged as she was for the sake of outrage that someone was challenging her long deliberated view using logic and reasoning. And please, you cannot tell Daisy that negative numbers do not exist. Even Charles Dodgson had to concede that. And calculus has existed since the time of Newton. You really do need to renew your teaching practice with modern mathematics, Miss Bunting. Milo broke off. The school teacher's face was white. But, I really don't think, she began. But Milo held up a hand. No, replied Milo, I can tell that you really don't think. And, oblivious to the applause behind her, Milo turned and walked with Thomas Barrow to the memorial dinner back at Downton Abbey. 88,888,888 Prue met Thomas, Bates and Milo at the back of the kitchen that evening, and all three men walked with Milo back to the village. Thomas was at pains to make sure Tom Branson saw that she was protected, and that he, Thomas, was backed up, so he chose a route that took them along past the garages and out to the southwest corner of Downton Abbey. Branson thought of himself as one of the good guys, so he could never imagine himself telling Lord Grantham, no matter how bad his beating had been. But, just in case, it was good to know that both his lordship's valet and the head of the IRA were beside them. Bates said goodbye at the church, and Milo thanked him. And then Thomas and Prue walked in silence back to Milo's house. I will be staying with my wife the night, Thomas told Prue, as Milo took off up the stairs. And I will be gone early, as I have to help to prepare for the journey north. Then I will see you around, Thomas Barrow, Jack Prue told him, gesturing to the hallway, for I am packed, and I will be off shortly. In the NGHT? Thomas asked. Prue smiled. All is washed clean in the black of the nighttime, he told him, and held out a hand. You will always have an ally, a comrade, in myself, Thomas Barrow, he told him. Please, come to Ireland. It is a beautiful country. He handed Thomas a slip of paper. On it was an address in Cork. And you in me, Jack, Thomas replied. The Irishman smiled. If I am ever back in England again, he snorted a smile. I do not intend to be from my homeland a minute longer than I must, he told him. Otherwise I do not know what my boys would do next, left to their own devices. I'll be seeing you, Mr. Barrow, Prue told him. I do hope so, Mr. Prue, Thomas replied. Oh, and I have made you both a supper, it is in the kitchen, Prue told them. And he put his hand to the lock of the door. The clicking sound brought Milo back downstairs. Jack, Milo asked, peering down the stairs. Goodbye, Colleen, he told Milo, and added a farewell in the Irish. Goodbye, Prue, she told him, and added the reply to the farewell. And then she flung herself at her old friend. Jack Prue chuckled quietly, and gave her an indulgent pat on the back. Now, be looking after this fellow, until I see you again, he instructed her, and opened the door. Milo and Thomas watched the Irishman walk out of the gate and down the path, in the light of the gibbous moon, before going to the kitchen. Milo flicked on the lights, and Thomas investigated what had been left: cold meat, bread, cheese, fruit and an apple pie. He knows how you like apples, he told Milo, as they ate the supper together. I'll be safe, Thomas. In Germany, I have Friss and Payerls and Oppenheimer and H.B. Milo shook her head, smiling into her food. It's not like you imagine, she replied. He was crazy with sadness, with homesickness, with the work. He got help, and Planck has offered him a place doing mathematical physics. I will be experimenting, on behalf of Chadwick, and Rutherford, and H.B. And something in Milo's smile confirmed to Thomas what he knew in his heart. How it was any different between her affection for this young German and his love for Ernest, or Blackett, he did not know. Thomas could not get pregnant, for one thing, being a man sleeping with another man. Milo was vulnerable, but he needed to trust her. She would be 21 by then. He is merely an ally, a friend, Milo went on. Someone I can talk to, who likes walking and the outdoors, who tells me Goettingen is hillier than Cambridge, which I can believe. Who I get, and who gets me. I haven't many of those, I never have. Risk Duce, Milo added. And we fought the Duce, Thomas told her. We fought the French once, and are we not allies now? Not as allied as you might think, Thomas replied, taking the salt. Even the Belgians, whose land we had come to liberate, did the dirty on us when we thought we weren't looking. He thought back, delayed letters, food rations going missing, parcels delayed, letters opened, all had come through Brussels. But, I can go, even if you don't trust me. At this, Thomas put down his fork, and laid his right hand on the table. I trust you, I do not trust other men, he told her. Not after ... Branson. He raped you for the hope of money. Milo frowned, and dropped her head. Not all men are like that. My colleagues are like brothers. We are not men and women. We are scientists. We are allies. We look out for one another. Thomas chuckled. Like the roasting you gave Miss Bunting, Thomas said, smiling at her wryly. Oh, she had it coming to her, he added. She has been so rude, so opinionated, even upsetting Lord Grantham, and I don't think Branson was too keen, near the end. And, you beat him, didn't you? Milo asked. If she discovered that he had not left, and had instead remained, or gone back to Ireland, she knew she must stand by the Troscad, and return to Downton Abbey. As Mr. Bates said, 3 reprobates discovered him. Thomas said nothing, but continued to eat his supper. I meant it, about the different being accepted, Milo persisted. Thomas looked back to her. Miss Baxter told me, about the electroshock therapy, about the injections. Thomas looked away. Well, she blood well shouldn't have they, he replied, bitterly. Thomas, look at me, Milo implored, and he moved his head towards her, sullenly. Is it ... because you don't want to be attracted to men, or does it have something to do with me? There was a long pause, where neither of them spoke. Then Thomas put down his fork. I just don't want to be different, Milo. I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking it would help you, Milo told him. And if I ... if I could do something about myself, about my social awkwardness, and I thought those things would help me, I might try it. She nodded. I realize I am lucky. Thomas looked at her intently. Lucky to have had my family, my brother. Lucky Lord Grantham took him in and had faith in him. Lucky I met you. She leaned towards Thomas when he shook his head. You made me survive my childhood, Thomas, she told him, smiling. If it weren't for you, I would never have had the freedom at Downton. I would never have stood before Rutherford and presented Ernest's work. I would have been ward to Tom Branson, with no university, and probably stuck here in domestic servitude while my talent went to waste. She put out a hand. I am glad you are different, she told him. It doesn't matter to me, you are kind, and generous, when you want to be. And that you wanted to be to me means a great, good deal. Name an element after me, Thomas replied, waving a hand towards her, trying to be indifferent, while all the time his heart felt as if it were glowing in his chest. They did love one another in their own way. And the way to truly show it, Thomas had been told many times in his life, was to let it go. But don't be too long in Germany, Thomas told her, and don't be a stranger to Downton Abbey. He pointed with a dessert knife to the next course, as Milo smiled to him. Thomas smiled back and asked, apple pie?